Hi, everyone. My name is Anna McDougall. I am a former opera singer, now Director of Product and Engineering at Axel Springer NMT. The NMT stands for National Media and Tech. QR code there goes to my LinkedIn. Please do connect. I'm happy to connect with anyone and everyone. I'm very, very friendly. And today I'm going to talk about, yes, even you have transferable skills. And before I begin, I would like to apologize. I have a bit of a cough. That's an understatement. I've been coughing a lot. I've taken my lozenge. I'm drinking my water. I've done the nasal spray. I'm really hoping that I can get through this without coughing. But if I do cough, now you know why. And please accept my apology in advance because it's not nice to hear. For those who don't know, anyone in Germany has probably heard of Axel Springer before, but if not, we are we're Europe's largest media publishing brand. To give you an example, our news websites receive over 3 million unique users every single day. So we are operating at scale. I am one of 8 directors of product and engineering there. And I have a very unique role. If you want to know more about it, you can ask later. But I did come from a different background, which was as a former opera singer. So I feel like I have some space to talk about transferable skills because the transition from opera singer to software engineer and then to director of product and engineering is, let's say, not a traditional path. And I suspect that it's maybe not one you've heard of before. So I think, I had to prove to myself and to others many times why I thought my background as an opera singer made me a good programmer. And today I want to show you what those are, how I proved it, and then kind of tie that into how you can find your unique thing, find your transferable skills that are useful to a programming career, and then a little bit about how to prove it. So before I begin, let's just have a look at this. This is me. I look like I'm yelling at a nun, but actually I was preparing for my programming career. I just didn't know it at the time. So this was on stage in Prague, a great opera called Suor Angelica, in case you're interested. So my path into tech, as I mentioned, not very traditional. I'd done a little bit of HTML actually as a kid, so I wasn't a complete stranger to tech. I got my undergraduate degree in media and communications, so journalism with a secondary major in Spanish. And I went on to work in project management, marketing for a few years before taking up singing opera as a hobby. But my teacher, who was herself a professional opera singer, said to me, you should try to do this professionally. So I made my first major career change and auditioned for a Masters of Music at Sydney Conservatorium of Music and successfully got in. And 7 years after that, I was in the middle of an opera career. So I had a 7-year career as an opera singer, and that was why I moved to Germany. You might be able to tell from my accent that I'm actually Australian, but I live and work in Germany and have done for 8 years now. Yes. So I moved here because there's a lot more classical music and it provided a lot of opportunities for me. And at the birth of my first child, I was 7 years into this career, and I had a bit of a kind of introspective moment where I thought, okay, I love being on stage, I love singing, but is this what I want to be doing for my whole life? And whichever way I looked at it, the answer came out as no. And the reason was not because I didn't love what I was doing. It was a very hard decision to make for that reason. It was because I'm a very ambitious person. I like climbing the ladder. I like challenging myself a lot. And there's no kind of like senior opera singer, right? Once you're an opera singer, you're an opera singer. It's a great job, but you're not moving up or down or whatever. It's just you are where you are. And secondly, even though music can be very impactful, for me, I didn't feel that impact directly enough. And I wanted to be part of something where I felt like I could make a positive difference and a more direct difference. And tech being an area I was always interested in, provided that opportunity. So I realized, okay, this is in demand, there's money here. It's mostly in English, which is also a benefit when you live in a German-speaking society. I've had touch points with code before. Let me see if I can still do this. So I taught myself for a few months. And then after a few months of doing it, it was like, I knew I had to do this. Like JavaScript for me was just, it just worked for my brain. Like I just understood it. And I knew, okay, I have to go into this. I've definitely made the right call here. And I started talking to recruiters, and they were saying, look, in Germany, the piece of paper matters, right? Like even if you're a great coder by yourself, we need to know that you can work with people. We need to know you can work in a programming team. We need to know that you've got the skills, and the piece of paper helps us with that. Now, I wasn't going to go back to university in my early 30s. I already had a master's degree. I felt like I'd done my time at university. So I did a kind of a 9-month, 10-month course, got my piece of paper. And throughout that entire course, I was on Twitter. I was doing 100 days of code. I was making YouTube videos about JavaScript concepts, which are still there. They're old now, but they're still there. And yeah, writing blog posts, and even started speaking at some events. So I'd gotten very involved in the tech community. And then when I was coming towards the end of my course, I combined what I knew about performance, what I knew about marketing, and this huge community that I'd built up, mainly through Twitter and YouTube. And I created a video CV pitching myself to employers and saying, here I am, this is what I'm good at, this is what I can do, here's my experience. And that ended up getting me my first tech job in under 2 weeks. So essentially I used the whole like, don't go to them, bring them to you idea. And somehow it worked. So I feel like I got very lucky, but it wasn't just luck. It was also that I was using these skills that I had built up before in helping me achieve this. So that's kind of my path to tech. And after doing that, after getting my first job, I was still talking a lot in tech. I started learning Java, so then I started talking about Java a bit more. One of my videos that I'm still very proud of is a Java crash course for JavaScript developers. So kind of like an introduction. So if you are someone who's done JavaScript and are interested in Java, please look me up on YouTube. But anyone who's in programming has heard of the DRY principle, do not repeat yourself. And I was repeating myself. I was repeating myself a lot because a lot of people were coming to me asking the same questions. What programming language should I learn? When am I ready to apply for jobs? What should be in my portfolio? How many projects should I have? What do I need to do for a technical interview? A lot of these questions were coming up over and over again. And I ended up writing this book, You Belong in Tech: How to Go from Zero Programming Knowledge to Hired. And I wrote it to avoid repeating myself and kind of answer all the common questions that I had about changing careers, both from my own perspective, but also through the many, many stories and interactions I've had with other career changers, honestly, both successful and unsuccessful, that have allowed me to see what patterns emerge, who tends to do it and who tends not to. And there are patterns, and I cover them all in this book. So that's why I wrote the book, and people started buying it, and here we are. So what's up next? Yes, so I want to talk about 3 major things that I learned from my opera career that actually helped make me a good programmer. These 3 things are taming the ego, learning systems, and then problem solving. These things, I have to say, are essential to both opera and to programming, but they're also it should be familiar to anyone who has learned a craft. So to my mind, excuse me, if you've done any sort of craft, even something like woodworking, you will recognize a lot of these things. And I want to tell you this not only because people find it interesting to know, but also because it might help give you ideas about how you could find similar things out of your past and your personality. So let's get started. The ego. This is my friend Tim. Tim is an amazing human being, and he's also someone I used to hire as an opera singer to be what's called a coach. And what a coach does, not quite like at codebar, but kind of similar idea, is his job is to sit at the piano. I stand with my music and I sing something, and he plays the accompaniment, and then he stops and he tells me every little thing I'm doing wrong. He corrects not only my intonation, so if I'm flat on a note, of course, he would have to tell me that. If I'm missing a crescendo or a decrescendo, if I'm pronouncing the wrong vowel, if I've gotten the rhythm slightly off, anything like that, it's his job to tell me all these little things, right? And he's not the only one. In opera, we have vocal coaches, teachers, chorus masters, conductors, directors, language coaches, and even our own colleagues whose job it is to make sure that we are not only performing everything correctly, but also in terms of the voice, but also in terms of our movements. Are we standing in the right place? Are we interacting in the right way? Are we moving to the other side of the stage at the correct point in time? Are our dance moves right? All of this kind of stuff. We have people constantly telling us everything we are doing wrong. And it honestly did feel like, and hence the image, like you're standing on the edge of a cliff. Because it's like, can I do anything right? Yeah. And I think this feeling, it forces you to confront your ego, because you can't afford to go in there thinking that you know everything, or thinking that you won't get any corrections, or expecting to do everything right. Every person who walks into a rehearsal room in the opera world will be getting notes in some form or another. No one does a perfect job. It's just not possible. It is a high art form. They call it the Olympic sport of singing, and there are reasons why, and that is one of them. You know, you will always be told what you're doing wrong. And this has helped me tremendously in tech. I feel very lucky in that I have only very seldomly experienced imposter syndrome in tech, very, very rarely. And the reason is simply because I don't expect to be good at anything. And I know that sounds kind of self-deprecating, but I promise it's not. My ego is very healthy. I'm very confident in myself. But I also go into situations knowing there is always room for improvement. And it's exactly because of that opera career that I have this mindset. I never go into a code review, for example, thinking that there are going to be no notes. Yep, I've done it. It works perfect. Like, I always expect notes. And if I don't get notes, I'm kind of like, what am I missing? There must be something, right? So this has helped me a lot. I've recently started being in charge of a program at my workplace for incorporating more career-changing women into our workforce. And part of that was interviewing team leads, senior developers, other directors, and saying, what are you looking for? Like, what kind of skills do you want? And one of the things that came up over and over again was, I need a good communicator. I need someone who can take feedback and not get defensive. You know, I need someone who can handle being wrong a lot at the beginning, because most junior developers will be wrong a lot at the beginning, and that's part of the job. And if you can't emotionally handle that, that's a problem. And so that is part of the skill that opera built for me. So what's the next one? Systems. Any musicians in the audience here are familiar with the circle of fifths. It is basically a chart, as you can see, of how the key signatures move and work and relate to each other. And it's just one of many, many systems that musicians and opera singers in particular have to understand and know. This is a vowel chart. So in opera, we sing in multiple languages, usually not in English, usually not our native language. And we have to therefore be able to pronounce and many, many other languages, from Russian, French, Italian, German. And to do that, we use the International Phonetic Alphabet. These are just the vowels. These are just the vowels. We've got consonants too. But here you can see how the different vowels work, and also where in the mouth they are, the front of the mouth, the center of the mouth, or the back of the mouth. And this is another system that you really have to learn and understand in order to properly prepare an aria or a role in opera. Now, one other thing that a lot of people who maybe aren't so familiar with opera might not know is that we don't use microphones in general. So you can see here, this is an opera theatre, and to sing in this opera theatre, you'd be standing on that stage, that teeny tiny stage over there. You'd be standing on that. The orchestra of 70 to 100 people will be playing in front of you, and you have to project your voice to thousands of people with no microphone. How do you do that? Well, it's a very physical thing. I mentioned earlier that opera is the Olympic sport of singing, and here it actually is a very physical thing. We are using not only our vocal cords, which is obvious, and our lungs, another one that's obvious. We're using our diaphragm, our stomach muscles. We're sometimes using our butt. We're clenching our butt a lot. We're using our skull to project sound through what we call the mask. There are a lot of things that we're doing here in order to do that. And that's another system we have to understand. And as if all of that weren't enough, you also have to dance and act. So we've got this high precision musical prowess that is needed. It needs the force, the physical force from your body, but at the same time, you can't afford to just stand there and belt it out. You also have to move, you have to dance. This picture is from the opera Carmen. There's a lot of flamenco dancing in Carmen, there's a lot of choreography, there's a lot of acting. So these are all systems we have to understand. Stagecraft, how to act, how to communicate a character. It's all part of it. So what do we use those systems for? Well, we use them for problem solving. So just learning the systems, kind of like in programming, it's not enough, right? You can learn what a loop is, but if you don't know how to use it to solve a problem, it's kind of a useless skill. So here I've got this picture because I want to say that in opera, our goal is the wow factor. We want to wow the audience, be it making them very sad, making them laugh, making them feel romantic, whatever it is. We want to give them this wow effect. And how we do that is by using all of those systems that I just spoke about. How do we use music? How do we use language? How do we use acting? How do we use the physical force of our voice to have different effects on people? That is part of the art. Yeah, so we've got the craft side, which is just learning the systems, but the art comes from how you use them to solve problems. And you can see here, I mentioned earlier the International Phonetic Alphabet. That's not the only thing that we're writing on our music. We've also got lots of things here. It's just an example of how we write things up to solve the problems. We've got all these systems and we need to apply them to the music. The music is it's like the requirements, like the product requirements that you get as a software engineering team. But just having the requirements is not enough. You then need to kind of translate those into code. Right? And here, that's kind of what we do as well. We have the music, and then we need to be able to apply the systems we've learnt to translate that into a form that we can use when we are practicing and rehearsing. An example of this is a fermata. So a fermata is a beautiful, it looks so simple, it's just a dot and a line, and you would think, oh, what a cute little symbol on my music. But it's a problem. The fermata is a problem because the fermata basically means do whatever you want on this note. And as a musician, that is both a challenge and an opportunity, because you then have to decide, what am I going to do on this note to give the effect I want to give? This is a very famous aria, an excerpt from a very famous aria from The Barber of Seville, which is a comedy. And here you can see what a fermata looks like. It's there. And officially, if you just held the note as it is written, you would say something like, guitar, like that. Boom. Okay, end. But this is a comedy. It's also in the style of bel canto, which we have to know about. Music history is another thing I probably should have mentioned in the systems. And you have to know what to do. So one of the things I would do here, for example, is guitar, right? Completely different. It's not written anywhere here. There is no music written that does that, but I'm not the only one who would do something along those lines in this aria. The fermata is my opportunity to say, oh, I know how to make this funny, or I know how to make this a bit like quirky, or I know how to make this particularly emotionally impactful. And so before I go on to the next part, I will just say, like, this to me is exactly the same challenge that you as a programmer face, right? You say, oh, I need to create a dashboard, or a product owner comes to you and says, I need a really great interactive app. And you're like, okay. And then you say, oh, what exactly do you want there? I don't know, you solve it, you're the expert. All right. So then you're in the same position as I'm in as an opera singer with this fermata. You're saying, okay, I have to do this thing. I know what kind of thing they want. I know all these systems that can help me build this thing, but now it's up to me to decide how to apply them. And that's the challenge. That's the art, right? So now you've kind of seen how I can take, these three things that I learned: taming my ego, learning systems, and then applying those systems to solve problems as transferable skills into programming. But of course, you might have completely different path. Your path could be from architecture, it could be from teaching, could be from sciences, it could be from hairdressing, I don't know. But the fact is that if I can find these three transferable skills and make a solid argument for why they make me a good programmer, I'm so sure that you can find something too. There are many, many different paths, and I'm convinced that you'll be able to find something. And the idea here is to set your own stage. One of the most common mistakes I see career changers making is trying to compete with fresh computer science graduates. Now, some of you might be computer science graduates, so maybe this doesn't quite apply to you, but for those who aren't, don't try to compete with them. Don't try to compete by their metrics. Use your own metrics. Use what makes you unique. Find something that you have that most software engineers or programmers don't, that is valuable, right? As another example, the fact that I'm a good public speaker, even before I was an opera singer, I was a good public speaker. That is rare, and that is also valuable in software engineering. So it doesn't have to be something from your career. It could be something just about your personality trait. It could be something about the culture you grew up in. I don't know you, and I don't know what it is for you, but I do know that you have something. Yeah, you have something there that's unique, and you should use that, and use that as your kind of value proposition, right? Of course, you have to network. Why am I bringing up networking? Because these kinds of stories are easier to tell in a networking environment actually than in an interview situation. And if you can create a network around you, not only will you hear more about what's going on in the industry, you will learn more about what's going on in the industry, you will hear about job opportunities, you might be recommended for job opportunities. You have to make these connections. They are essential. And there's another way that you can use your network as well. By the way, I included this picture because it shows me being nice to the nuns. So I wasn't always mean to them. I was only mean to them on stage because I was the bad guy. So, so don't think I'm mean to nuns. I'm not mean to nuns. So this is another thing from my book. It's called NNQ, and this is kind of my guideline for how to structure your applications, or your applications, which is names, numbers, quotes. So I mentioned networking. Networking gets you names. How do you use these names? Okay, I met Sarah from, gosh, I don't know, Google, and I'm applying to a Google position. I could write, in my cover letter, for example, or in a message to a recruiter, I could say, I recently spoke to Sarah. I think she's in your XYZ team. I met her last week at this event on effective React rendering, and she mentioned there might be a position available in this other team. Is it worth me applying? Here's a bit about my background, blah, blah, blah. Just having the name Sarah in there already helps your chances exponentially. I wish it weren't so. Yeah, in an ideal world, right, everyone is considered on equal basis. But the fact is, if you know someone inside a company, it helps break down that first barrier. And so the names often help you get that first interview. You can then also use this in cover letters. If you don't know someone from that company personally, you can reference their CEO or a director or whoever has spoken at something, or you've seen a YouTube video. You could say, I loved the YouTube video of your CEO, blah, blah, talking about, innovation. I personally come from a robotics background and am so thrilled about innovation in this field. I'm now changing into software engineering and really want to bring more innovation to the next role that I take on. Here's how I do it, etc. The names just kind of help make things familiar when you're applying to jobs. Next is numbers. So the names for me is like how you get the application in, or hopefully get you to the first interview. Numbers is really about, again, about your cover letter and CV, and about your interviewing as well, which is, okay, let me give you an example. What sounds more impressive? Option one. As an opera singer, I performed on many different stages, in many different languages, and with lots of different people. Or option B, or two, I can't remember which one I used. As an opera singer, I performed over 40 operas, sometimes with more than 120 people on stage across 7 different languages. Right? The second one sounds more impressive. The information is actually the same, but for some reason, when you use numbers, it kind of quantifies the scale of the things that you're doing. Now, it could be that you use percentage points, it could be that you use dollar signs, euros, maybe you talk about how much you sped things up, or you talk about how much money you saved or earned for the company. You're basically using the numbers to show what you achieved in your role. And last but definitely not least is quotes. By quotes, what do I mean? A great example of this is the recommendations section on LinkedIn, which if you're not already using, if you do one thing after this presentation, go to your LinkedIn and start asking people for recommendations. I guarantee it helps. You go into your recommendations and you ask people to write you just a few sentences about what you're like to work with. These could be friends, well, maybe not friends, but classmates, co-workers, mentors, teachers, former bosses, anyone who has worked with you or had anything to do with your technical development, and you get them to write just a few sentences about you being good at what you do, fast learner, passionate, or you're particularly skilled, or you're very friendly, you lift everyone up around you. It does matter what they say, but as long as it's positive, then just having a broad range of quotes here can be really helpful. A lot of people, when I mention quotes, I want to really knock this one on the head. I'm not talking about getting a whole page of a formal reference from your previous boss. That's a nice thing to have, right? It's nice to have a good reference. I'm not debating that. But here I'm talking about short quotes from as many different people as possible. I'm talking quantity over quality. And the reason is this. When you are going for jobs, they're not just looking at whether you have the skills and the communication abilities and you can take feedback and all that stuff. They also want to know that they can work with you every day for 40 hours a week, right? They need to know that you're someone who is going to be pleasant to be around or productive to be around, and you're not going to be someone who drags people down, okay? So you need to provide backup to that idea even before they meet you, right? So if you can provide that, especially if you're an introvert, by the way, this is especially valuable because maybe you don't interview so well, but you're actually a really good team player. So you want to provide as much context around what you can do as possible. So if you're an introvert, for example, you could even explicitly ask a coworker to write your recommendation that says, Jane doesn't often come across as the most confident person, but once you start working with her, you realize that her skills are exceptionally good and she really is great at lifting up other team members when they're in trouble. Something like that. So you kind of preempt the problems that the interviewer is going to have with you by fronting up straight away the rebuttal to that. And so they don't have an opportunity to think it because they've already seen the opposing side. So you can use these quotes, by the way, in your CV. I used to just put them as an extra page at the end of my CV. I used to just have recommendations or references, and then I just include a whole page full of quotes. You can use it in your cover letter, of course. As I mentioned, on LinkedIn, definitely. The last thing I want to talk about is another thing from my book. This is an image that I just stole straight out of it, which is my recommendation for how to craft a cover letter. And the idea is to match your skills and experience with the job description. So one of the biggest mistakes is having the same cover letter that you send to everyone. And the reason that's a mistake is because job requirements listed on the website are often different. So what you should be doing is have a list somewhere of all of your experience, skills, interest, especially these transferable skills, especially things that make you different, or that you think are particularly strong for you, major strengths of yours. And you should have a list of those somewhere. And then when you read a job description, you should be saying what matches to what, creating these lines between them. Okay, they mentioned that as they want a team player who's interested in mentoring others, and you're a former teacher. Perfect. You can then go in and say, okay, I'm an ex-teacher. You could say in your cover letter, for example, you mentioned in the job description that you want someone who will mentor others and raise them up or be a great team player. As a former teacher, I'm not only used to helping others, but I'm always open to learning more myself. It comes naturally to assist the team as a whole while also providing value individually. Boom. That's great. And you've now created something that is unique about you. Most people applying to the job are not a former teacher. They can't claim to have that, but you've got it. And now you've directly tied that to what they want in that job description. So these are just some examples of how you can match your unique skills and experience to the job requirements. And I'm going to leave it there. I hope that was helpful to you. The orange one is a link to my book. The white one is a link to my LinkedIn. Please do connect with me. As you can tell, I'm quite friendly. I really don't bite. And yeah, I hope you found that useful.